All right. So, first of all, can you do a quick intro of yourself? Like a short, like,
Hi, I'm Daniel Asia. I'm a composer. I'm 71 almost in a few weeks, and I've been writing music for about 54 years since I was in my middle teens. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and I started my musical life playing the trombone. And that was because I went into the music teacher when I was about 9 years old and told her I wanted to play clarinet. And she said, "Well, you have two front teeth that protrude a little bit. It would be hard for you to create a good embouchure." And she said, "Have you ever thought of playing trombone?" And I said, "No, but I'll be happy to do so." And to this day, of course, I don't know if that was true or if she just needed somebody to play the trombone.
oh,
But we'll get to it. It might be true. Anyway, I discovered I really like playing music, and I like playing the trombone. And I ended up taking lessons like everybody does. And I ended up playing the school orchestra and band. And then when I got to high school, I had to wear braces to correct probably those front teeth. And my music teacher, a wonderful man named Peter Siebert, said, "Well, okay, you're not going to be able to play trombone in the brass choir, so why don't you start conducting and I'll start playing trumpet again." So that's how I started to learn what conducting was all about, was in the ninth grade. And I
wow.
did that for a year or two, and we took a number of us were very interested in music, and we did first and second year college theory that he had at Amherst College with him when we were juniors and seniors.
Wow.
And I practiced really hard, and I got into the Seattle Youth Symphony, and which was run by a very interesting and rather overbearing conductor. And I discovered that life as a trombonist in a symphony was not very exciting because you usually counted hundreds of measures and you were usually playing a piece that was written in E major or B major, which are not good keys for trombonists. So I quit after a couple of concerts. I just didn't like it. And by then I'd learned also how to play uh, classical guitar, and then I picked up uh, jazz and learned to play jazz on trombone and guitar, and I learned trumpet in the recorder family.
Mm.
And I had the chance at the end of high school to go on the road with a band like Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I decided not to do that and went to college instead.
Wow. That's that's an exciting journey.
Yeah. And then I went to a place called Hampshire College, which was in Amherst, Massachusetts, where Amherst and Smith and Holyoke. It was a new place called Hampshire College. And I tried not to do music for about a month to see if I could do without it, and I couldn't.
Mhm.
So I then started taking music courses and writing more music. And that was that. I studied music and European history while I was there. I went to the San Francisco Conservatory for a year in the middle of all of that because I
Oh,
felt I needed more theory and more ear training. I did solfege. Do you guys do solfege in your pre-college course?
yes.
Oh, wonderful! Because that's the one thing I didn't have. And a good friend of mine, his name is Stephen Ansel. He's now the principal violist in the Boston Symphony Orchestra after being in the Muir String Quartet, one of the great string quartets for many years. And he thought that was some of the most important things that he did as a student. He was a Curtis.
Mm.
But maybe he did stuff at Juilliard. I can't remember.
Mm.
Anyway, and then from after Hampshire College, where I studied conducting and composition and European history, and I sang in the choir, and I started a brass choir so I could keep conducting, and I was the assistant conductor of the Smith Holyoke orchestra. I went off to the Yale School of Music,
Well,
and there I continued studying composition and conducting. And the two most important teachers for me were Jacob Druckmann and Arthur Weisberg, a composer and conductor, respectively.
wow.
And then I went into New York to seek fame and fortune. And I started a new music ensemble called Musical Elements. And it ran for about 15 years. And we did a series of concerts in New York City for that time. And I went to Berlin for a year. It was then West Berlin on a grant called the Deutscher Akademischer Austauschdienst, which is the German equivalent of a Fulbright. And I studied with a Korean composer named Lee Sang-yoon at
Oh
the,
my God.
at the Musikhochschule in West Berlin. I taught at the Oberlin Conservatory for 5 years. I conducted the wind ensemble and the contemporary ensemble. And then I lived in London for a couple of years, writing music under the grant from the Guggenheim Foundation, a fellowship, and United Kingdom, a United Kingdom fellowship. So, and then from there, I came to the University of Arizona to run the composition department at the School of Music.
Wow.
And I've been here ever since. It's been 36 years.
Oh my goodness. That is an amazing career that you had.
And
And
during that, I should also mention I was composer in residence with the Phoenix Symphony through the
amazing.
Meet the Composer Composer in Residence program. So yeah, it's been a good life. I've enjoyed it.
Well, it's certainly a very, very impressive career. And now I just want to ask you about your compositions. Um, I was recommended At the Far Edge by one of my composer friends at pre-college, which I listened to and I really liked. But is there any particular composition that you feel is very representative of who you are and you would like to share your inspiration and process for?
Well, that's a tough question because for every composer who's worth their salt, I think every composition they've written is like a child. And we love all of our children as parents. At least I have three children and I love them all. And my compositions, I still love most of them. I don't let them out of my studio until I think they're ready for the world to hear. So it's a complicated question. You see, it seems like a simple question, doesn't it? But so I started off as one of those composers who was rather revolutionary, right? And wanted to write new music that nobody had ever heard before. So I was a post-Boulesian in that regard. I was taught that you didn't have to know too much music of the past to write the music of the present. So my early music is what you guys would probably call ugly music, although I don't find it ugly. So some of my early pieces, I still like my early string quartet number one. It even won an award at Yale when I graduated as being, I don't remember what the award was named, but it has lots of avant-garde techniques and was influenced by composers like George Crumb and Earl Brown and Christoph Penderecki in his early years. But the difference is my music goes someplace and it has directionality, which I think is very important in all music, no
For sure.
matter of what, no matter what the quote language is or isn't. I still love a piece called Sand 2, which is an early piece that I wrote probably while had just gotten to New York. And it won a couple of awards, a BMI award and an ASCAP award.
Oh, amazing. So then if it's quite hard for you to pick one because they're all like your children, can you share about At the Four Edges inspiration and process? Because I like that one.
Yeah, sure. And you can probably read a program note someplace.
Mhm.
So At the Far Edge was commissioned by the Seattle Youth Symphony and was played therefore by kids just your age.
Amazing.
And they did it because, of course, I was one of their graduates and I'd played in the Youth Symphony, even if they don't remember that I quit. But I'm not going to tell them, and you're not going to tell them, and nobody's going to watch this video, and they won't know that. And it was for a celebration, I think, of some important year for them. So at that time, I was composer in residence, I think, with the Phoenix Symphony, and I'd really been introduced to the orchestral repertoire in a way that I hadn't been before.
Mm.
I was going to concerts every week and I was sitting in on all the rehearsals. I mean, stuff that I should have done when I was a student at Hampshire and a student at Yale. I should have been encouraged to go sit in on orchestral rehearsals, but I wasn't. So I was very much influenced by the work of Aaron Copland. I'd come to respect his work in a way that perhaps I hadn't quite known before. You know, you don't know everything when you're young, do you? You have to learn a lot. There's a lot of repertoire out there to learn. So I was influenced by his open sounds, and I was very much influenced by popular music rhythms. So those two ideas, because popular music is what I grew up on. I grew up with the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Simon and Garfunkel as much as I did classical music, because that's what all of my peers were listening to. Now, and I played a lot of jazz also. So for any American composers, those American rhythms of popular music and jazz are part of who we are, it seems to me.
Mm.
So I thought those would be two sources that I could draw upon in my writing of At the Far Edge. So you got lots of perfect fifths and perfect fourths in At the Far Edge. You've got nice melodies that are pretty simple. And then you have very important rhythms like dee da dee da dee da dee da dee. And the whole piece is about looking at that as a composer would. So what can you do with that kind of rhythm? You can go dee da dee da dee da, and you can go da da dee da dee da. And what is that? It's re-rotating essentially some of the important rhythms or retrograde of some of the rhythms. And that's what we composers do. We try and take material and we try and work with it in such a way that, for me at least, and this is something that's not happening as much as it used to, and I'm kind of sad for that. But each piece by a composer used to have an identifying persona.
Mm.
I mean, think of Beethoven's Five.
Yes.
Ba-da-da-doo, 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 dee-dee-doo-dee-dee-doo, dee-dee-doo-dee-dee-doo, da-da-da-doo, ba-doo-ba-doo, ba-da-ba-doo, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da, boom, bam. Right? I mean, Beethoven had an idea, and then you say, what can I do with the idea?
Hmm.
And you, as a performer, when you learn a piece, you discover what the idea or ideas are of the piece, don't you?
Yes.
And so, what was At the Far Edge about? It's about American music and it's about youthfulness.
Mm.
And that you and your friend and colleague like the piece delights me no end because it was written for kids of your age to play and say, yeah, this is pretty cool. I
Yes.
like this. I like this. It's approachable. Now, there's something also to be said about it, and I just said it, it's approachable. It's meant for an orchestral audience. It's not a string quartet and it's not a piano sonata. And again, I'll reference Beethoven. Beethoven's piano sonatas and string quartets, particularly the latter ones, are meant for a very sophisticated audience,
Yes.
where his symphonies are meant for everybody to come into the concert hall and listen and love them the first time they hear them.
Yes.
So that's what this piece was meant to be. And
Mm.
now I'll tell you one quick side story, but nobody else can know except for you and me and a few other people who listen to this video.
Yes.
And that is when I got to the first rehearsal. I had a horrible, a bad experience. The conductor was playing it almost at halftime.
Oh.
Dee da dee da dee da da dee da dee da da dee da. And I came up to him. I said, "You're really playing it much too slowly." And he said, "Well, I don't think they can play it if we go much faster." And I said, "You know what? I think you're going to discover that these rhythms are in their bodies and in their souls,
Mm.
and therefore they'll be in their figures. And if you play it, ba do da boo da da dee da ba ba bee, they will get it instantaneously." And he said, "Okay, I'll give it a try." And guess what? All the kids your age just said, "Oh yeah, now we get what this piece is about," and they
Mm.
just played their rear ends off,
Oh my
and
God.
it went really well.
Wow. I mean, it sure did what it was supposed to do. When I heard it, that was one of my favorite parts of it. It was how exciting and youthful and energetic it was, and I would have played like the kids if I played it myself.
I'm sure you well get one of your orchestra conductors to program it with one of your orchestras.
I actually
What
will.
what orchestras do you play in?
I play in the Juilliard Pre-College Orchestra and the Perlman Music Program Summer Orchestra.
Wow, and everybody's as good as you, huh?
I mean, everyone's really amazing, so yeah, I'm sure they could
Well,
play it amazingly.
I'm sure they could. So you should mention it to your conductor. I mean, you're an exceptional player, and clearly the talent level in the Juilliard pre-college program is extraordinary.
It is.
So I would certainly hope that, like the New York Youth Symphony, that you guys in your program are getting exposed to lots of new music because it's music that you will immediately understand.
Right.
If it's good music, you'll immediately understand it. Why? Because one, it's music, it'll be music of quality. And two, it'll be music that relates to the world that you guys are growing up in right now.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons you like it. You like At the Far Edge. It's a piece of now. It's about what's going on. It's about how you're looking at the world and the things that you're seeing and the things that you're hearing.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's completely true. And I will bring it up with the orchestra director.
Sure,
Um,
why not?
yeah. And so now my second question, and I only have a few. So my second question is, I find it interesting that you had like a robust musical career even as a young teenager. And I just want to know, like, in college, what drew you to composition? Like, yeah, basically.
You know, it's a really tough question for me to answer, but I'll answer it, I think, the way most composers would answer it. And that is, you're learning all this music when you're young, aren't you?
Yes.
I mean, I was as a young conductor with a wonderful vocal, a choral conductor named Iva D. Hyatt. And Iva D. Hyatt was at Smith College, and I took a class with her in choral music.
Oh wow.
And then I studied with her at Tanglewood
Mm.
and got introduced to motets by William Byrd and to Stravinsky's Mass.
Oh,
A fantastic piece.
yes.
And by the way, a relative of mine, Sam Dushkin, played the violin music that Stravinsky wrote. They played concerts together. I forget what they're called now, but Stravinsky wrote some decent violin music. You might want to check it out. Anyway, sorry, that was an aside. So, and then you're learning all of this other music. I love to play Renaissance music of the Gabriellis on trombone and Petzel and yeah, I loved orchestral music and got to soon be introduced to obviously Beethoven and Haydn and Mozart. When I was in San Francisco, I listened to every Haydn symphony that they had in the
Oh,
library. That was part of something, a task I did for myself.
oh
How do
wow.
you write over 100 symphonies? Okay, but somewhere when you're doing this, something wells up inside of you and said, God, I love all this music. It's fabulous. But there's a music that I haven't heard yet that I would like to hear. And then you realize that that's a music that you want to write. Because nobody said something that comes out of your soul, or as we Jews say, out of your kishkas. That's sort of your stomach area. It's got to come out from your entire body and soul. And I discovered this when I was writing music in high school, that I had something that I wanted to hear, and the only way I could do that was by writing it.
Mm,
And that's what all composers, I think, are animated by that conception, that
mm,
idea that they love lots of music, but they still haven't heard the music that they want to hear and that they realize they have to produce it
mm.
to hear what they want to hear.
Yes, I get that. Well, I think you did what you set out to do, and you've created this, you know, kind of real, as you said, you wanted to embody this kind of American way spirit, you know,
Yep.
and I heard that um in your pieces and in At the Far Edge, and yeah, I just want to say, like, I admire you so much for, going out and really putting to music what you heard in your head. And yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Remember, being a composer also in our time is more complicated. A lot of my music is also based on Jewish texts. I've written many, many songs.
Mm,
And I've written a lovely piece which you should know about called Psalm 30, which
um,
is for baritone, violin, and piano.
amazing. I will check it out afterwards.
Yeah, so how is it that an American Jewish composer confronts setting a Jewish text which is thousands of years old,
Right.
right? How did Bach deal with setting texts that come from the Christian Bible, right? How did he, as an 18th century composer, come to his idea of how to set all of those cantatas?
Right.
Right? Besides the double concerto and the Brandenburg Concerti, which are secular works.
Mhm.
So composers we're complex people.
Yes.
We respond to all sorts of input that comes to us, which is why it's so much more complex to be in a composer of today. What did Bach know about? He knew a little bit about the Italian style and the French style and then the German style, but he didn't know about Indian classical music
Mm-mm.
and he didn't know about Indonesian gamelan
No.
like Debussy and then Ravel learned,
Right.
right? He
So,
didn't interact much with Russian composers or Russian folk music.
no. So I think this, yeah, as you said, is all like it reflects the changing times as well, like composers' music, like becoming more aware, more global, more connected with other cultures.
Yeah, I mean it's a very exciting time
Yes.
you and I are living in. And God willing, you're going to have another 80 years to live in this and explore it. But I think the most important thing to remember is there isn't that much great music in our own time. It's a it's a cauldron. It's a boiling pot of different music, of different things, and you have to find the music that you really love. And it seems to me that you and all of your wonderful colleagues. That should be part of what you're starting to do, is finding composers in their 20s and 30s. Because remember, very few of us come out now full-blown masters like Mozart from the age of 7,
Yes, I agree.
right? Just doesn't happen. We have to learn our craft. I mean, that's why for most of us are we running out of time? You're looking
Yes,
panicked.
the Zoom is the timer is going down the Zoom, and I'm getting so nervous because I want to continue our
Oh,
conversation, but
okay. Well, that's the only thing I'll finish then. I'll say that how important it is to find composers who are growing and to grow with them as you get older too.
thank you so much.